Welcome to Rocky Broad Solar, where we encourage you to make the current flow. In today's episode, we're going to talk about connecting a solar or energy storage system to your home's electrical service and how it pertains to the National Electric Code. Let's get into it. So what we have here is a utility meter and a main service panel. In this case, they are separate. In a lot of cases, in certain parts of the country, you'll have what's called a combo meter or combination meter load center. And that's where the meter and the load center or main service panel is all in one unit. In areas where you have these, it's a little more difficult to work with because you have to operate under load side connections only. When it comes to solar and storage, having the ability to do a supply side connection between the meter and main service panel is always going to leave you the most options. So these main service panels can be a little bit tricky. To open them, they have a little spring-loaded tab right here that you have to pull out and simultaneously pull the cover down and open. So you pull out, you push the cover down and open, and that's how you open the main service panel cover. What you have here is your dead front cover, and it's called that for a good reason. It keeps you from being dead. Behind the dead front cover is a lot of dangerous live electrical equipment, and if you are not certified and trained to work on live electrical equipment, you should never open the dead front cover. This is for professionals only, and I do not recommend anyone at home to open their dead front. Now on the nameplate or the main label here on the main service panel, you've got a lot of really important information. For today's episode, all we're really concerned with is the bus bar rating. So in this specific panel, the bus bar rating is mentioned right here on the nameplate where it says specifically bus rated 225 amps. If you have a GE or another panel such as a Square D, oftentimes you cannot find the bus bar rating on the label. It can only be found inside of the cabinet, behind the dead front cover. On the wall of the cabinet, there'll be a sticker. And again, if you're not a professional, you should not be looking for that rating. So now that we have the dead front cover removed, we could see the service conductors coming in from the service into the main service panel. They are entering the service disconnecting means. In this case, it's a main breaker, and it's also an overcurrent protection device. That overcurrent protection device limits the amount of current that can travel from the service onto the bus bar or into the main service panel. This is your bus bar right here. This is what's energized by the service conductors and then feeds your branch breakers that feeds your individual loads. So there's two main ways you can connect to a utility service for solar and storage through the National Electric Code, and that is going to be a supply side connection found under 705.11 of the 2020 NEC, or the load side connection that's found under 705.12 of the 2020 NEC. The main differences there is what side of the service disconnecting means is the connection on. So the supply side is from the utility meter to the main breaker, or on the supply side of the service disconnect. Load side of the service disconnect would be from there down or anywhere elsewhere in the house. Now with the supply side connection, the reason why that is better is because we can connect up to the rating of the service conductors or the service. So if we connect on these service conductors here, in this case we have a 200 amp service, and these conductors are rated for 200 amps, and we can connect up to 200 amps of solar and storage to the service through a supply side connection. Now with the load side connection, it gets a little more difficult, and so the most standard rule used there is what's called the 120% rule. And that is in general for a backfed breaker. That is taking your solar and storage, connecting it with a breaker just like any other load onto the bus bar. Now the reason why it's more difficult is because that bus bar is only rated for a specific amount of current. In this case, we have a 225 amp bus bar. So in a nutshell, the 120% rule states that you can connect up to 120% of the bus bar rating with the grid and solar and storage combined. So what we do is we take the 225 amp bus bar, we multiply that times 1.2, which gives us 270 amps. Now we're getting 200 amps from the grid. That leaves us with 70 amps of solar plus storage that we can connect through a backfed breaker using the load side or connection rules of the NEC. One thing to note about the 120% rule: when you are connecting to a bus bar via a backfed breaker, it has to be at the opposite end of the bus bar from the overcurrent protection device coming from the grid. So in this case, we would connect our backfed breaker at this end of the bus bar, and therefore we're not overloading the bus bar at any given point. We're sort of spreading the current more evenly across the bus bar. So one common thing that installers might have to do if, say, the system is a little larger than what can be connected through the standard 120% rule. Here, say I had a 90 amp solar plus storage system, they would conduct what's called a main breaker derate, right? Because we have 270 amps, we get to subtract the main breaker rating, and that's what's left that we can connect with solar and storage. So in this case, you could derate this main breaker down to a 175 amp breaker or a 150 amp breaker. Let's just say 150. In that case, we would take that 270 amps minus 150. That would leave us 120 amps of solar plus storage that we could connect through a breaker on the load side of the service disconnect. Just remember, a breaker derate is not always possible. The main breaker has to be sized specifically through the National Electric Code by doing a load calculation on your home. So if your home needs 200 amps, you cannot derate the main breaker down to 175 or 150. In order to do that breaker derate, you need to guarantee that your home does not need more current than what the main breaker will provide. Well, everyone, if you found value in today's content, hit that like button, subscribe, press the notification bell so you can be notified when I come out with more content. If you're a homeowner living in the US and you're interested in a quote on your home for solar or energy storage, there's a link down in the description below with an intake form where you can fill it out. I'll be in touch within a few days with a personalized quote for you. Again, I appreciate each and every one of you for watching. Till next time, take care.